On this episode of In the Gun, the Mountaineers drop a Friday night contest to the Cougs. We'll recap it all on this episode of ITG.
Caution, this podcast contains bad jokes, optimism, and a healthy disdain for Pat Narduzzi. Watching it may increase your actual knowledge of actual football.
ITG.
All the pieces are in place for us to have a chance to win it all.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
There's Owen Schmitt in the building.
Like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Towards the end, he in here, Jed Drenning.
I'm not much of an athlete.
The thing that's non-negotiable is playing hard and playing tough.
And Wesley, Valen, Uhler. You are in the gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 286 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wes Uhler, flanked by the best in the business. We've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, fresh from Utah. And, of course, we have got to break down the Mountaineers' 38-24 loss out there at Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah. Before we do that, though, of course, it always takes a village, and we've got the best village. A thank you to Bet Online. The game starts here for being a kind of day one presenting sponsor of this podcast. Also to our good friends at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. I think Jed, by the time he got home on Saturday morning, probably wished that he would have just got a vehicle from Toothman Ford and driven home from Provo, but we'll get to all of that in just a minute. Shout out to everybody there at Team Toothman. A big thank you to Fortis and our friend Rick Lewis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. To Johnston Equipment, make sure you're checking out their location, Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. You can also visit them online at Johnston EQ. That's Johnston with a T, JohnstonEQ.com. And of course, to our friends at the Book Exchange, all your Mountaineer gear and WVU apparel at the Book Exchange, locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their two locations, downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive. You can always shop online as well at bookexchangewv.com. And of course, when you do, make sure you're using that promo code in the gun 20 in store or online for 20% off on your friends here at ITG. Jed, the Mountaineers fall, the Mountaineers fall to the Cougs there, to BYU, like I said, in Provo, 38-24 in a raucous atmosphere on Friday night. I think anybody who's followed college football, watched college football for more than a few months, Jed, has seen the beautiful aerial shots, backdrop, the view from the press box there in Provo at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. I got to imagine that seeing it in person was probably even more spectacular. One of the coolest, most unique settings for a college campus, for a college football stadium, I got to think, in the entire country.
For sure, it ranks up there. And before I forget, TCU here toward the end of the month, you're going to be tailgating. I think you got the Packers Sunday night.
I will be
Pittsburgh.
At that TCU game.
So you'll be at okay. The reason I ask is Johnston Equipment reached out, and it sounds like they're going to be swinging by the tailgate in the Peach Lot to hook up with you guys. So,
love it.
Yeah, Emily and probably her brother. So be on standby for that. I wanted to mention that before I forgot. But yeah, I'll tell you this: we stayed in Salt Lake. It was this crazy, quirky travel scenario where initially we were supposed to fly to Provo, land, bus back to Salt Lake, which should be 45 minutes, the way the crow flies, right? But instead, because of high winds, we landed in Salt Lake. And then we were still talking about taking off. There was still chatter. We were going to take off and fly to Provo. And we're like, wait, what? Just scramble the buses. So fortunately, wiser people prevailed. They scrambled the buses, came back, picked us up, and we stayed in Salt Lake and just went straight to the hotel. And we stayed right down in downtown Salt Lake City, which is beautiful. Very clean city, surrounded by the Wasatch Mountains. I learned a lot of things. I kind of went out and explored. We had all day to do so Saturday before we left for Provo. And during my exploration, I encountered this dude that worked at the National Weather Service who was on his lunch break. And I happened to ask him, hey, where's such and such at? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I got some free time. Let me show you around. So he
That's
shows me
awesome.
around the downtown area for like 45 minutes. And he was saying, I'm just out walking during lunch anyway. So he showed me some really cool stuff. We went to the Mormon Temple, which they're in the process. That thing opened in 1893, took 40 years to build. It's quite it's a breathtaking structure. Right next to the tabernacle, which was also open in the 1800s, but they're earthquake proofing the temple. So they yanked the foundation, one of these
Wow.
engineering,
Of
works
course.
of magic.
Way too smart for my pea-sized
Oh,
brain.
and so like next year it's supposed to be finished, but yeah, I didn't realize there was an earthquake there, a 5.0 during COVID. There's a fault line right at the base of the Wasatch Mountains, right on the edge of the city. And he said, we're overdue, way overdue for a
Hmm.
7.5. So they're trying
Oh,
to
geez.
protect against it. And he was telling me all the hundreds of millions of dollars they've spent in this downtown area just building it up in the last 10 years or so. And it's impressive. It's a really impressive, cool area. So got to burn some time doing that, some breathtaking views from the city. And then we took off. Dwight and Tony and I left early. We had some good eats Friday night and Saturday around Salt Lake there. And we took off early to make sure we beat the traffic because there was both traffic coming out of Salt Lake and going into Provo. So we had to leave plenty early for that. And it turns out, good thing we did. It took us, Tony timed it, an hour and 40 minutes to drive from Salt Lake, and it should be 45 minutes. So it
Right.
was
So
an
about
hour
an
and 40
extra
minute
hour.
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got there, and again, you had time to poke around, take some pictures, check out the facility. Big Daddy and I hooked up, and he was bemoaning the fact that he couldn't get a free cougar tail anywhere. Everywhere he went, people were carrying these giant. The cougar tail is this foot long, 15-inch long pastry. Okay, it's a famous like donut, but
Looks
it's
like I was
shaped
gonna
like a
say it
tail
looks
of
like a
cougar.
donut
Yeah.
on steroids. Yeah.
It is, and he kept saying everywhere I go, people are carrying cartons and cartons of these things to take them to be sold. And he said I haven't had a free one yet. And then finally they brought some down to our booth, and it was right before I was going back down to the field for pregame, and I never did get any of it. So I couldn't tell you what it's like. I'd like to give you a review, but I don't know. But I'll tell you what, Wes, I went up on the roof of the facility where by the camera deck is, and that's part of where I shot that footage and those pictures that I posted on social media, sent to you guys. And as breathtaking as it is to look toward the stadium, it's equally breathtaking to look away from the stadium back toward the lake. And it's just a beautiful part of the world. It really is. And the facility's impressive. The crowd was impressive. The people were very kind. It's kind of like in K-State fashion. I always say that they fluff your pillow with one hand and punch in the mouth with the other. It kind of had that vibe because everybody was super kind to us. Everywhere we went, they were super kind and
Good.
accommodating and made everything easy leading up to the game for us. But the facility was impressive. We asked their radio guy before the game, hey, what kind of crowd do you expect? And he looked at us like we were silly. He said, capacity. What do you mean? He said, what do you mean, what kind of crowd? Of course it's capacity. We're going to have 63, 64,000 here, like we always do. Okay. It's a BYU game. Why wouldn't we? You
Yep.
know? And sure enough, they did. And the student section was loud and large. It's right down on the field behind the end zone. I'm not sure which end of it was to our right from the press box from our sideline. Uh, but, the radio guy said, hey, that end of the field, every game's good for two or three false starts, either going in or coming out.
Hmm.
And boy, he was right. That place is noisy. It's really noisy. So hats off to their fans. And there were quite a few West Virginia fans there. I think some of them traveled from different parts of the country. They wanted to take that BYU experience in. And so hats off to Mountaineer Nation again. But yeah, the trip itself, going out, it was one of those bucket list type facilities that, growing up, especially as a quarterback, how could I not love BYU football? And it was just a fun team to watch with all the quarterback greats they sent through there. They played pitch and catch like nobody else back in the day when I was a
Hmm.
kid. And watching it with the Wasatch Mountains in the background and the facility, it just seemed so different than anything we had seen. So it was definitely a bucket list trip. Uh, but then, of course, as we'll get into it, the game didn't unfold the way you would hope. And then the travel home it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. It's at least approached the 2013 beating we took in Baylor after the late game, in which TSA didn't have a flight crew ready for our flight, and we had to wait on them to scramble one from Dallas while we sat on the buses and wait to fly home at 4 o'clock in the morning. This was right there with that. There were not necessarily high wind warnings, but there was rain. We took off from the smaller runway in Provo, and I think that made them a little more jittery about the slippery runway.
Sure.
And at least that's what I was told. And they said, "Hey, we're going to try and outlast this weather, and then we're going to take off." And then they told us, and once we do, we have this 10-minute trip to Salt Lake City to land and refuel. And we're like, "Wait, what?" So very quickly, let me burn through the
Oh,
diary that
man.
I was keeping on the plane, just bullet pointing our timelines with what we were trying to overcome here. Okay, we boarded in Provo at 1:45 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 3:45 here in West Virginia. So we boarded the plane at 1:45 Mountain Time, 3:45 here. The pilot at 1:50 Mountain Time said, "Hey, we're taking off shortly after the weather blows through for a 10-minute flight to Salt Lake, and then we'll land and refuel." Okay, 3:13 a.m. We finally took off, sitting on the hot plane for an hour and a half. 3:13 a.m. Mountain Time, 5:13 here. We took off from Provo. 3:24, he was right. It was 11 minutes. We landed in Salt Lake to refuel. 4:15, we finished refueling. 6:15 here, 4:15 there.
Yep.
We took off at 4:30 from Mountain Time from Salt Lake.
Good Lord.
6:30 here. We landed in Bridgeport at 9:45 here, and I pulled in at 11:44 into my driveway.
That's a long day.
And that's after getting beat by a couple touchdowns. That's
I
just
was going to
insult to
say,
injury.
I mean, Jed, like this is now my 4th year on the road with the Steelers for my day job. So not as long as you've been traveling, but you do it for that long, you'll run into travel delays, even at the NFL level, right? You can't control it. Even Roger Goodell and the billions of dollars behind that NFL shield can't avoid everything. But it's never after a road trip where you win by multiple touchdowns and everyone's in a great mood. It's always after a loss. It's always after a loss. We had 2 years ago, Steelers go down to Houston and lost like 31-7, got boat raced. CJ Stroud's rookie year and kind of his coming out party for the Texans. And we had plane issues and had to sit on the runway for like 3.5 hours after the game. It's always after a bad loss. It's never after a big win, a comfortable win. It's always like something in Baylor, always like something there, Friday night in Provo, a game that didn't go your way. It certainly wasn't a blowout. We'll get into it, but that definitely did not go your way either. I'm sorry you guys had to deal with all that, but at least our Mountaineers,
right?
first world problems, certainly. And I guess at the end of the day, any travel that lands or ends with everybody landing safely in one piece is still successful.
And I'll close with this. I had a lot of time sitting on that plane to think. There's 16 teams in the Big 12 spanning several time zones. And I understand the needs of TV and inventory and the needs of filling certain slots. 8:30 Mountain Time kickoff, 10:30 Eastern. Okay, if that's a need from an inventory standpoint, you have a lot of choices before you dip into your Eastern time zone teams to do it. So if you have to fill that slot, please, why does it have to be West Virginia, Cincinnati, or UCF to kick off 10:30 Eastern time with all the other
Maybe give them
options you have at your
Colorado or
disposal?
Arizona or somebody, all right?
I mean, that's all I kept thinking. I'm like, really? Three of 16 teams are in the Eastern time zone, and one of them is who you pick to kick off 10:30 Eastern time? Come on, man.
Cruel and unusual punishment, some might say. Certainly. It was it certainly need a bye week for a lot of reasons. We'll get into that when we return on the other side. We'll break down the Mountaineers 38-24 loss to the BYU Cougars Friday night there in Provo when we return. He's Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Uhler, and you are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
You're listening to Mountaineer Football Talk.
ITG.
When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnston Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready. 0% financing available for up to 84 months on select models.
Johnston Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
When shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter code INTHEGUN20 at checkout for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
Back in the gun here as we roll along. The Mountaineers drop a tough one, 38-24 to the 23rd ranked. I imagine they'll move up a couple spots, 5-0 now. BYU Cougars there at Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah. Jed, I mean, there was a lot to get into in this one. I think we obviously saw multiple quarterbacks for the Mountaineers once again. We saw a WVU defense that made some big plays and gave up some big plays in key moments. A great performance by Bear Bachmeier, by the BYU freshman quarterback. And I thought in general, too, and maybe this is where I'll start. I know the final score isn't flattering. I know we had to score late to cover, to still lose by 2 touchdowns. But this was a late Friday night game. 10:30 start East Coast time for most Mountaineers. And I think there were a lot of people that were in kind of the same boat as me, that the one thing I'll give them credit for is there were a few times throughout that game, I'm sure as you can imagine, that it's 12, 12:30, 1, 1:30. And I'm like, okay, maybe now I'll turn this off and go to bed and I'll watch the rest, when I wake up in the morning. Every time I thought about turning it off, here comes the defense making a big play, or here comes the offense putting together a touchdown drive. It was opposite from the second half in Kansas. It was opposite from that Utah game in that regard, that every time I thought, okay, here we go, we're about to roll over and take it, and we're about to roll over and die and get boat raced. Our guys kind of, stuck their flag in the ground and said, not so fast, and went out there and made a play. So I thought that was encouraging. But like I said, obviously plenty went wrong as well, too, when you lose by 2 touchdowns on the road and give up 38 points in the process. So where's it all start for you? Where you want to dive in first?
Let's start with operationally. I'd say you talked about the young quarterbacks, how they handled the environment. I thought by and large they acquitted themselves pretty well in a tough place to play a football game against a Saudi defense that's very well coached. It was obvious we were trying to play with a small game plan to help the young quarterbacks out. And when you can get ahead of the sticks, even by a little bit, and stay there, that can be productive. It puts you in position to string some first downs together.
Sure.
The issues arise when you have to condense your game plan for your young quarterbacks. The issues arise when you fall behind the sticks. When you find yourself in a host of third and longs, you burn through the limited calls you have available in those third and longs pretty quickly. Right. You're like, boy, I'd like to do this, but we already did. And you're looking at your call sheet. It's not as extensive as you'd like it to be. So we kind of made the most of that. We went into this game dead last in Power 4 football. in third down conversions. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case in this one against a BYU defense that was 7th in the country in third down defense. Wes, we were 7 of 15, almost 50%
I know.
on third down. So that allowed us to string together. And some of those were third and longs. I remember we had one drive of 3 third and 6s or more that Khalil Wilkins converted. He found a way to throw it or run it on all 3 of those. So, I mean, that was a promising sign, again, against a very talented and veteran BYU defense. So there were flashes of things to see out of those guys. And then when Scotty got in, hats off to Scotty. The first time he got in was stone cold in the middle of a drive, and all he did was bust a 20-plus yard run to keep the drive going. So hats off to him. And then he gets in for that final possession, a 2-minute sequence when it's 38-17. So BYU comes out, in effect, in a version of a prevent, and Scotty sees it and says, all right, I'll take what you give me. Boom, quick hook. Boom, quick hook. Well, then on the third snap, BYU's like, all right, we're not going to be so generous anymore. We're going to bring some pressure. Well, Scotty saw that, and he recognized he had to get the football out, and that's where the 29-yard touchdown pass comes. Perfectly placed, perfectly timed. So I think he adjusted well and handled the situation and the environment. So when you look at what the 2 young kids did, and quite frankly, there were times that when you have a kid like Khalil, I think part of the reason you get into some more productive third down success is because even when you're forced off script, you still have a puncher's chance because of his athleticism and his escapability and his ability to ad lib. And you saw some of that. So, I mean, if you're going to look at the numbers total, nothing we did is going to blow you away. But Khalil, 7 of 15, 81 yards. He had the 2 picks. Of course, you're going to expect some mistakes out of your young quarterback, right? But at the same time, one of the things we talked about before the game, even in our preview, we said, what do they do with their underneath coverage? They're very aggressive, and they'll route read, and they'll try and rob you. Well, that's exactly what happened on that first pick. It was almost like, wow, you talk about setting yourself up for a double move, which we did later, which was his second pick, which was open.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, it takes some reps to battle your way through seeing some of those things in real time. And once you get them on tape, that's a different type of coachability than just in practice. It really is, between the lines. The first pick was, throwing that thing late to the flat, corner squats on it, picks it, and almost scores. Great job actually getting down there and making a play. And the second pick, you go with a double move on it. Cam gets behind the corner. He's anticipating the throw, Khalil is. Underthrew it just a touch, but it was just enough to allow that corner to leap 3 feet off the ground and get a hand in the air and distract Cam Vaughn's eyes, and the ball bounces out of Cam Vaughn's chest. And the next thing you know, Tanner Wall, their free safety, who, by the way, is a former receiver, and it shows in his ball skills, makes an incredible interception inside the 5. So those were the 2 turnovers that played out. I mean, when you look at the run game, sometimes, I mean, again, Dior Hubbard's numbers aren't going to blow you away. Less than 2 yards per carry. Unfortunately, a lot of times when he was trying to tote the mail, there wasn't a whole lot there. There just wasn't a whole lot there. So the quarterback run game between the 2 of them was our biggest flash. We worked in. Part of the issue was man Singleton, who's our fastest slot receiver, was on the shelf with an injury. So you would have probably game planned a few more of those jet sweep type actions if you had your fastest slot receiver in there, but that wasn't the case. Gerard Bowie, picked up 8 yards and set up a nice first down. These are the types of things you were trying to string together to move the football at a patient clip down the field against, like I said, a very talented and veteran BYU defense. But you would have liked to have seen Cam Vaughn come down with the play that ended up being picked off. I mean, I consider him, that wasn't an easy play. But I don't consider him, an average player. I consider him an elite player or someone with elite potential. And that's the type of play that someone with elite potential comes down with and makes. So those are the types of things that you can't leave on the table against a defense like this. Again, you're only squeezing out. We found a way to run for 156 yards on them. We only threw for 135, and that was kind of disjointed. It was top heavy, like a lot of it coming toward the end. But you just can't afford to leave those types of plays on the table. And I thought we kind of, there were times we did.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's certainly a lot of those moments on offense that they're going to want back. I think plenty of those on defense as well too. Like, man, you look at the PFF grades. Like one of the things that jumped out to me, Jed, was you look at the PFF grades and they did not grade Michael Coach Jr. well. In fact, I think he was the lowest of the WVU defensive players. My goodness, about three different times he was in position to make a massive play and it just didn't go his way. And I think he was maybe the one that you kind of expect that least from because he had been so good through the first handful of games. I feel like it's just that kind of night, like you mentioned, especially against a team like this, ranked on the road, nighttime environment, 63, 64,000 people jacked up and into it and, ready to show off their team and their atmosphere on a national type spotlight. That the encouraging part to me is we weren't really saying that as much in the second half against Kansas, especially, and then in that Utah game, right? It's not like you can point to a couple plays on offense and a couple plays on defense. If those had gone differently, different result. Maybe in the first half against Kansas, but certainly not in the second half. That hadn't been the case for 6 quarters. So in a weird way, I do think there is some progression there. But now you've got to like it looked like they were, and particularly on defense as well, too, man. It looked like they were in the right position so many times, but were just a half second or half step or half inch away from making the play that they need be. And again, when you're playing on the road in that type of environment against a ranked team that was 4-0, now 5-0, feeling good about themselves, those are the inches. Those are the Al Pacino inches that are all around us that make the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, defensively, I would start with this. It certainly didn't feel like it in a game in which they gash you for over 500 yards. But we've been bemoaning missed tackles and poor tackling for the better part of 3 to 4 weeks. Believe it or not, we tackled better. We tackled a little more efficiently. Depending on where you looked, we missed anywhere from 6 or more tackles. That's way down from the 20 some we had missed against Utah. Yeah, we were almost in position a couple times and we just found ourselves out of position. But you talk about Michael Coates. I mean, that's a case in point. First of all, from a preparation standpoint, and I'll paraphrase this at best, Zach Alley, what he does, he has a protocol he goes through. He gets the defense together. The whole defense is together. He has them on the board right before we take the field, just to recap and review and make sure that they understand what their responsibilities, their roles. And he does the same thing at halftime, obviously, except at halftime, what you're going to do is you're going to look at some of the plays that have hurt you and why, and then what you might expect that you haven't seen yet, that type of thing.
Sure.
But before the game, one of the things he told them, he dialed up some of the shot plays that BYU likes to bring. And he said, look, they're going to bring it early. And he said, I don't even care if you cover them. They're still throwing it. He says, the corners, high alert. You can be on them like glue, and he's still throwing the football because he believes their receivers will beat you even when you have them covered. He said, they're going to take a shot. They're going to take it early. And even if you're covered, it's still coming. Wes, first play of the game. Play action, shot play to Chase Roberts. Big, tall Chase Roberts. Big, tall physical presence. I think he's a really good football player. Michael Coates right in front of our bench.
Right
Michael
where he
Coates
wanted to
step
be.
for step for step like glue on him. And Chase Roberts goes up, gets the football. Michael Coates tries to dislodge it, doesn't. And Chase Roberts, big old man he is, comes down and wins the 50-50 ball with the physicality that he's demonstrated through 4 games already. So Zach Alley kind of warned those guys it was coming. Michael Coates stepped up and covered the guys expected. The only thing he wasn't able to do was make up for the 4 or 5, 6 lost inches in size and strength and height and bring that football, dislodge it when it's starting to come down. So he had the 2 targets that gave up, and that's why the grade from PFF comes from where it does. He had the 2 targets that gave up the extensive yardage. The other one being the slant, which was coming out from their end for the 85 yards down inside the 10.
Yep.
And again, that's mano a mano. You got to find a way to scrap and claw and treat that like goal line because, yes, we had a safety misaligned, but at the same time, you can't give away the inside the way we did. And it wasn't like he was wide open, but he was just open enough for a great throw, and off he goes. So those are the 2 key plays. Now, what stuck out to me was there was a point in the second quarter in which they went deep to Chase Roberts and they called the DPI on Michael Coates. So that also was in front of our bench. And Rich was giving the officials an earful and a half.
That one was questionable.
Here's why that made perfect sense to me. Okay. You better give them an earful and a half, because to me, against a guy as large and physical as Chase Roberts, if that's what you're going to spend the rest of the night considering pass interference, we can't stop him. Okay. We can't stop him, because to me, that was just a good football play on both sides. But if that's what you're going to call pass interference against that big physical kid, that's a long night for us if we can't even do that. You know? So that's why Rich was fighting the way he was fighting. Now, sometimes these things happen, and you hear tale of them throughout the league, any league that you might be in. Complaints starting to come from other Big 12 teams that, hey, these officials are letting those West Virginia corners be way too handsy. That shouldn't be the case. Well, that's kind of made its way around and circulated to some extent. And so you almost expect at some point, oh, yeah, well, I guess we got to quash that and be real ticky-tacky on anything we call. And you're not just going to be allowed to be handsy and play a physical brand of football like you have, but we're looking with an extra eye to make sure you're not, to shut these people up who are complaining. Sometimes those things make their way around the league about certain things, certain tactics, certain calls. Hey, watch it. These guys are lining up off sides. Hey, watch it. These guys are getting too handsy. Hey, whatever the case might be. And officials, after hearing it for long enough from 2 or 3 sources, whatever it might be, it's probably going to affect some level of change. So don't be surprised if that type of thing was going on. And that's why the game was, and of course, the officials did not dictate the outcome of this game. We had 3 flags called against us all night, I think, right? And BYU was in double digits. That wasn't the case. I'm just saying, when you look at the game within the game, that was something to keep an eye on there. And yes, Michael Coates is a guy who was really even targeted this year because people just thought that wasn't a safe place, an efficient place to go with the football, wasn't a lot of bang for your buck. Well, BYU saw something in this matchup with Chase Roberts, and Chase Roberts is a nightmare matchup for a lot of people. I mean, that's the truth of it. I mean, he's legit. He was the highest graded player they had for a reason. But Wes, he's 6'4", 210 pounds, and can jump.
Whew.
So he's going to be a problem for a lot of sub 6 foot corners or corners who are under 6'1". He's going to be an issue for some people. So at some point, you run into a player like that, the math's just going to be on their side, and in that case, it was. But it seemed like the splash plays were backbreakers for sure, and they had a lot of them. And our margin for error was very slight. Like that seam route that he threw between our safeties for 39 yards, that was a big league throw. And I thought we were going to bust it up, and we just didn't. They came down with it. I mean, that was a big play.
He made some really nice
throw.
throws, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's hats off to them. They did a lot of good things on the offensive side of the football. I didn't think they'd come in and push us around. Their O-line's not quite like BYU's, or excuse me, like Utah's. They're more athletic, and their game plan reflected that. They're very athletic up front. So what did they do? They played pitch and catch to get the early lead. Quarterback run game as we expected. They made the big plays in the pass game. They got the lead. And then especially in the second half is when they started to lean on us with the run game and end up with the production they had running the football. They actually ended up out rushing us. But that's on the defensive side, kind of how I saw things playing out there too. There were some frustrating dimensions to what happened. And then you look at it, Wes, when you look at our success that we had on third down, well, that only goes so far when you give up 4 out of 4 opportunities on fourth down, right?
Right,
so,
exactly.
You know, we forced the turnovers. You know, you look at it, you pick him off. You know, you're looking at some different things where multiple turnovers forced in an environment like that. That's something that has to happen. So when you force 3 turnovers on the road, that's kind of what defense can do to put you in position to have some success or win. But it's the second week in a row that we went nearly the balance the entire game without forcing them to punt. They didn't have to punt until the very end.
Yeah.
And you're, like Rich said in his post-game presser, you're not going to win a lot of football games if that's the case. And it's just what struck me, Wes, is when you look at the first downs and the total yards, when you have 518 total yards, usually that's a 30-plus first down game.
For sure.
And that just speaks – they only had 23 first downs. That speaks to how many big plays they did have, right? That's not a winning recipe defensively. The turnovers for sure are. I mean, look at the play that Fred Perry made. I mean, Chase Wilson made a great pick. I mean, think about that. I mean, he read screen, diagnosed that thing, ID'd it, boom. That was a big play for us, giving us a short field. The play that Fred Perry made off the nickel blitz right into that speed option.
Huge. Yeah.
That was just an athletic play by a heads up. Fred Perry has been a very good football player for us, as we hoped and expected. I mean, we said this in the preseason. People were condemning him. Oh, he played at G5. Well, you didn't watch him play against the power conference teams, because I don't care what level it is. If he can play like he did against the power conference teams, he's going to be a good player. And here we are halfway through the season, and I don't think there's any arguing. Fred Perry's been a very good player for us. And you know, you take the bad with the good. You know, here come the 15-yarders, here come the ejections. That's the nature of his game. But he's been a very productive and good member of this defense for us. If you could have a handful more players like Fred Perry, you'd be in better shape. But that was a great athletic play that he made, and then came up with the recovery himself. I mean, that's been the issue so many times this year. When we do get the ball on the ground, we end up not being the ones that have it. But that was a case where Fred just said, I'm going to finish the deal myself right here, sets up a short field, gets the touchdown, really energized the sideline. But it wasn't all bad, obviously. You know, going on the road and losing to an unbeaten team by 14, you're never going to sign up for that. But at the same time, there were some flashes that potentially you can build on. But this bye week, it is what it is. I mean, there's some injuries that need to be overcome. Ty Edwards still wasn't back at full strength. We need to get healthy, and we need to get right at a lot of key spots. And this bye week came at a very much needed time for us. For a host of reasons. I think it's going to take us a couple extra days to recover from the travel all the way back.
No doubt.
Just what we endured on the travel, you know. But so yeah, that's kind of unfortunate the way it unfolded. But I mean, in this crazy new world of college football, I texted you guys in the group thread earlier. Here we are. We have one win against a power conference team, and Wes, that's one more than the combined total of the preseason number 1 and number 2 teams, who have 0 wins against power conference teams halfway through the season here. So Penn State and Texas haven't been a power conference team yet.
I know, it's crazy.
So, the crazy new world. Again, nobody's happy with losing. Nobody's happy losing with losing 3 straight for sure. But you got to find something to build on. And Khalil Wilkins, again, I think handled himself pretty well. Scotty Fox obviously showed us what you want to see in limited reps that he had. Did we get a little better up front? Well, we're still finding that out. But none of it was good enough. None of it was good enough. If you'd like to eliminate the splash plays defensively, that's what you'd like to do.
Yeah.
You'd like to go into a game like this and say, but for those 3 or 4 major gaffes where they just had huge plays defensively, what might this game look like? But yeah, of course, that's the nature of it. That's baked into the equation. Those splash plays are part of it. But instead of being 65 snaps away, does that kind of make you those 4 snaps away, which is more manageable? You'd like to see what the defense – we talked about the tackling issues. Well, they tackled in a much more efficient way.
Yeah, you're right. Just 6 missed tackles, according to PFF.
I knew it was in that ballpark. Yeah. Yep. I knew it was in that ballpark. And nothing stood out drastically like 3 or 4 on a play, like in previous games. Sometimes that did. So we've improved there. Now we take the next step and limit the big plays? Can you put those 2 things together? And what might that look like? Again, that's why I always come down to, are you bad for 65 plays, or are you bad for 4 or 5? Because if it's 4 or 5, you might be in a manageable situation if you can get that down to 1 or 2, right?
Sure.
If you can just give up 1 or 2 splash plays, now you might change the entire dynamic of a game. And remember, this was a ranked, unbeaten team giving us their best shot under the lights Friday night, which they've been daggone near unbeatable in the last 5-6 years under the lights in that stadium. So, that's why I think there are some positives to come out of this to build on.
I think they're certainly, like we said, much more than the Kansas game and the Utah game. And maybe, that's one of the positives as well, too, is you listen off the back of emotional backyard brawl. That's always going to be the case, but especially the way it played out there on September 13th, to have to make a long trip out to Kansas. Then you come back home and you get a physical, big Utah team. And then you get a short week, furthest trip you'll make all year back out to Salt Lake City. That's a tough stretch. I mean, that's no doubt. I think we all would have loved to have seen us, get one of those 3 at least. That's not how it played out. But I think you're spot on. Look, I think you'll like this, Jed. One of the things, I host a football show year round. And so during the off season, yeah, there's the combine and there's free agency and there's the draft, but there's also a lot of times that we're kind of looking for content and looking for things that we can talk about. One of the things that I researched and discovered this off season is that, and this applies to both the NFL and to Division I college football. I'm sure this won't surprise you. The biggest indicator in high level football is of who wins or loses a game is the turnover margin. That's the number one indicator, is who wins the turnover margin 70% of the time wins the game. The next two biggest indicators of who wins football games in the NFL and at the Division I collegiate level are sack differential and explosive play differential. And I think people, that makes sense, but I don't think it's that glaring. Like right after turnover margin, it's your sack differential. Right after turnover differential, turnover margin, it's sack differential, explosive play differential. You were dead even. Neither team gave up a sack on Friday night. But I wonder, I didn't have time to chart it here because you just kind of woke up from your long slumbers, and I just got back from the Steelers bye weekend away, getting away for a couple days with my wife. But I'll have to chart that here in the next day or so, because I bet you, Jed, that explosive play differential, which is defined as a 10 or more yard run, is considered an explosive run. A 20 or more yard pass play is considered an explosive pass. That's how they determine what an explosive play is. 10 or more yards on the ground, 20 or more through the air. I got to imagine that was pretty, when I go back and chart it, that number in the explosive play differential was pretty lopsided towards BYU.
When you think about it, all three of those stat categories also impact something that doesn't show up on the stat sheet: momentum. When any of those three things happen, that's an edge in your favor in momentum. Obviously, when you force a turnover, few things change momentum like that. When you sack the quarterback, that ignites your sideline. When you get a nice little play of 10, 20 yards offensively, that ignites your sideline. That puts swagger in your offense. So all three of those things impact momentum, which is the beauty of momentum is it can't truly be tracked. But I think that is the single thing that determines the outcome of most football games,
no
more
doubt,
than any.
No doubt.
And here's the last thing I'll say about the defense. Here's something else that tells me maybe we're closer than sometimes it feels, especially when you're forcing one punt in two games in which you gave up 38 and 48 in consecutive weeks. I didn't see BYU really, not just for the balance of the first half, maybe the balance of the game, not do anything or not present anything that Zach Alley didn't discuss. I really didn't. So now you just have to take that next step. It doesn't matter what the coach knows as he's telling his players. Sure. It matters what sinks into his players, right? It matters what the players know when they take the field between the lines. So things BYU was doing. I mean, Zach Alley understands the situations and understands what to expect situationally, and he prepares the defense for it. Sometimes that sinks in, sometimes that doesn't. Sometimes there's just something that doesn't click. But I didn't see BYU running a bunch of stuff. I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Zach never mentioned anything like that. That just wasn't the case. So you need to find a way to finish that sequence and get it to the point where, of course, the defense outside of a couple guys aren't going to understand it to the degree that the staff does. All right. But by and large, look at the defense overall. If they have an understanding and appreciation of the general tendencies that have been provided to them from the staff, and they master those general tendencies, I'm telling you, we're going to be in a good place. And it's just sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Well, sometimes doesn't work. Again, the staff knows every time, right? Mm-hmm. The staff understands those tendencies every time. And you need the guys that aren't the green dots understanding it as well.
Well said. And I think the good news of that is you get your bye week now. You want to talk about a good time to have it from an injury standpoint. I think from everyone just needing to breathe and reset and regather themselves from that standpoint as well too. And then like you mentioned, that's a bye week is a great time to drill down those those details, that minutia, the stuff that sometimes you're getting, sometimes you're missing. That is quite often the difference between winning and losing. I do think the bye comes at a perfect time. I would love it if we were back at home out of the bye. Unfortunately, you will have to go down to Orlando there and take on UCF, which at least it's not 5 hours, 4.5, 5 hours across the country. It is still in the same time zone.
It's like an old Big East game. Yeah.
It's like an old Big East game, certainly. And there will once again, I'm sure, be plenty of WVU fans there in Orlando to make it more of a not quite as daunting of a road trip for the Mountaineers. But yeah, I mean, here we are, Jed, already. We're 6 out of 12 into this thing, man. We are halfway home. And so again, from that standpoint, I think you could have certainly used the bye week before making this trek out to Provo on the short week without a doubt. But the good news is now you do get that bye at, I think, a very ideal time. And you get you get to kind of start fresh. You got 6 games, 3 on the road, 3 at home. Of course, ending with those 2 kind of, looks a little daunting in Arizona State and Texas Tech, 2 ranked teams there, but some opportunity to make some hay and I think get some wins in these upcoming games. And this is, again, too, like this is one of those points in the schedule where you'll start to learn a lot about this coaching staff, I think, as well. And you have you've done an amazing job of the history and the behind the scenes and how the sausage is made that you can tell us. But I think just from a 30,000 foot, just a macro standpoint, right? It'll be very interesting to see what this staff can do with these guys, in the 13, 14, 15 day kind of reset and break period that they have here now.
There were some analysts nationally looking at this big picture coming into this season, saying, not knowing what to expect with 81 new faces and on down the line, saying that, hey, if Rich Rod gets you to a bowl game, build a statue for him. Okay, well, I say let's find a way to carve out 4 out of those final 6, which that looks pretty daunting.
It sure does.
And see if you can improve enough over the down the stretch to carve out 4 out of those 6 and get to the postseason somehow, some way. Because let's face it, in most of those games, you're going to be an underdog. In some cases, maybe even a prohibitive underdog.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. I mean, here we have 6 left. The goal's pretty clear. See if you can improve enough. Improve more than they do, is what I should say. Everybody's trying to get better. Improve more than those remaining 6 teams so you can find a way to go out and knock off 4 of them and somehow push for the postseason. If the pieces are in fact in place at some of the more critical spots, if you can continue to get some production and remove or eliminate or minimize the mistakes from the young quarterbacks, if you can get slightly better each week up front, if you can get more explosiveness from the receivers, defensively, again, we'll take those 3 turnovers and figure out a way. Limit the splash plays to 1 or 2 instead of 4 or 5 or more, and continue to tackle the way we've demonstrated we can. That's your best case scenario. I mean, the team that West Virginia fielded the last 3 weeks is going to go out and win 4 of its final 6, but 2 weeks from now, you're hoping that's not the team you see. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Every rep and every practice is designed to make you better. So can you outpace your final 6 opponents and demonstrate more improvement than they do? That's what you're trying to do.
We're gonna learn, I think, even more about this team in the final 6 than we did in the first 6. I think that's typically the case with most teams. We all know, championships and bowl games and all those things aren't won or earned in September. It's typically in November, and the calendar is now turned to October. You get some time here to lick your wounds and reset a little bit. And I think we'll all be looking forward to what we see down the stretch, down the back half of this season. I guess a slightly quieter week here on ITG since we won't have a preview episode, but we'll still have everything else that you expect. We'll have some barbecuing with the beer truck. We'll have Phil Steele Friday.
Wes, no Phil Steele, no barbecue. I think what we're going to do, Schuyler and I were talking about this, I think midweek, we're just going to kind of gather together and do kind of an assessment through 6 games type deal.
Love it.
There's no barbecue this week. It will reconvene UCF week. Phil Steele comes back UCF week.
I'm glad you corrected me there. Thank you.
Yeah, get together in the middle of the week and and put together our thoughts about where things are through 6 games and what remains in the final 6.
Love it. Love it. We'll be looking forward to that a few days from now. And a final thank you. I did want to make sure, man, like everyone knows, the WVU fans, Big 12 fans have all raved about, how much fun it is to be in a conference with BYU, how much fun their fans are, how kind those people are. Man, a lot of BYU fans found this podcast in the past week. And sometimes in the past, Jed, like, we've had a lot of Penn State or Pitt fans find our podcast, and they haven't necessarily had the kindest things to say about us. BYU fans, man, you guys were awesome in the comments. In fact, Jed, we even had some BYU fans that were like, can we pay you guys to do a BYU show every week as well, too? Because we love the breakdowns and everything. That's a huge testament to you, Jed, and your research and your X's and O's and your knowledge and everything. But a big thank you. Like, that stuff does not go unnoticed. And we always appreciate, certainly when WVU fans are discovering this podcast and jumping in for the journey here with us. But a big thank you to all the Cougs out there who had nice things to say about In the Gun as well too. That's always very friendly and very welcomed.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to end with this because this is probably the most sensible place to put this since we don't have Phil Steele this week. And Schuyler's going to have to edit this, and I want him to hear it as he does. So I'm going to recap the 3 prop bets that Schuyler and I made for BYU.
Okay, there you go.
BYU, this was prop bet number 1. BYU leads the Big 12 in rushing at over 250 a game. WVU had allowed 242 in each of the last 2 games. Question number 1, will BYU run for 200-plus yards? We both said no. We both got it right. West Virginia held BYU to 167. BYU quarterback Bear Brockmeyer is one of 5 Power 4 starters to not throw a pick yet in 90 attempts.
Got one.
Number 2 is pretty simple. Will Bachmeyer be intercepted by the Mountaineers? I said yes. Schuyler said no. Thank you, Chase Wilson, for picking off that screen. You made me correct. Question number 3 to round things out. Will the turnover margin be a draw or better for WVU? Will it be even or favor WVU? That was a long shot. When you looked where we were in turnover margin versus where they were, I said yes. Schuyler said no. BYU turned it over 3 times, West Virginia 2, the Mountaineers +1. I was 3 for 3, Schuyler. Take that. I needed it because he was 3 for 3 last week. Yeah, there we go.
Jed, I'm glad you got that in. Had to get in a little feel good there before we got out of here. Big thank you to all the BYU fans, and I think a lot of Mountaineers. My wife and I were watching that game Friday night, and even, my wife is like, wow, look at that looks awesome. Look at that setting. Look at the mountains. That looks pretty cool. Like, we should get to a game out there at some point. And I was like, we absolutely should, sweetheart. And I think there were a lot of WVU fans that during the game and in kind of some of the stories before and after have thought to themselves, that's definitely one that we got to get on the list to get out there at some point. So really enjoyed 2 years ago meeting some BYU fans in Morgantown in a game that did not go their way at all. I know a lot of Mountaineer fans enjoyed meeting some BYU fans out there Friday night in a game that did not go our way at all. So maybe at some point we'll meet in the middle there and have a couple classics between these 2 programs. But that will do it for this edition of ITG. A big thank you to Schuyler for not only being a gracious loser to Jed in the Pick'em this week, but also for being a great co-host and producer, Mr. Do-It-All, for the Runaway Beer Truck Big O, the signal caller Jed Drenning. I'm Wes Uhler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you in a few days. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.